Hello, everybody. Good morning. Good Saturday morning to all of you. I am your Toastmaster of the day. I would like to introduce myself. I am Sha from Nielsen Toastmaster Club. I'm just relatively new to Toastmasters, and yep, I joined in the midst of pandemic, and I actually delivered my first speech during the pandemic or via Zoom. So this is my first time as Toastmaster of the day, so please bear with me. Okay, let me just please share my screen. All right. So again, welcome to Top of Your Game, August Educational Series, Cycle 2, Evaluation Learning Session. Have you ever helped your child or your sibling with a school assignment? Or maybe been asked by a coworker for some help on their project? Or ever given an advice to a friend about their love life, but they never listen anyway, right? Or maybe just commented on your siblings' ugly bangs or ugly haircut. If we all have been on that moment, then we've all been an evaluator at some point. So, what words do we usually associate with the word evaluation? Well, maybe we could say criticism, feedback, opinion, judgment, improvement. There are a lot of words that we can associate with the word evaluation. But in Toastmasters, I would describe evaluation as the heart of Toastmasters. We dwell and we strive and we grow more through these evaluations. People join Toastmasters to improve their speaking skills or leadership skills, but these skills are often mostly improved through evaluations. The tone and the content of an evaluation actually has a great impact to the member and also to the club. Maybe a harsh evaluation could make someone leave the club, and an overly kind evaluation may not actually help the member to improve, making the member quite frustrated or unhappy. A personal experience of mine, whenever I get evaluated, before I usually get intimidated. I feel like I've not done enough or I've not been the best that I've been. But in Toastmaster, I've learned that evaluation helps you grow and it's part of Toastmasters and you should just accept it wholeheartedly. Let me just, okay, sorry. Good evaluators strive to find a balance between the extremes, giving evaluations that are helpful and encouraging. And today, this morning, we are very much grateful to have esteemed champion evaluators who will share their experience and expertise in the world of evaluation. But before anything else, let me just ask for volunteers if they would be willing. They will be part of the learn and grow session later as evaluators. So can I see a raise of hands or you can just maybe chat in the chat box if you wanted to volunteer, please? Okay, so we've got some few volunteers. Thank you so much. Later, you can still chat. Yep, if you'd like to volunteer. We'd accommodate it later. Okay, so without further ado, let me introduce you to our first speaker. He is second runner-up from District 75 2020 Evaluation Contest from Make Hawaiian Toastmaster Club, from Synergy Toastmaster Club as well. Please welcome Toastmaster Ruben Acebedo II.
Hi, good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm Ruben from the Make Hawaiian Toastmasters Club. When I joined the Make Hawaiian Toastmasters Club last January 20, I talked other new members to joining the club contest for table topics and evaluation with me that day for the fun of it. Tara! Trip lang! Besides, I thought we'd learn something about public speaking, the club, and Toastmasters. For evaluation, I was told I just needed to give a positive, a negative, and a suggestion about a speech. But with PTSD or post-traumatic syndrome, syndrome from getting pointlessly polite performance feedback from the office, I decided I'd do the test speaker a favor by being brutally frank. So when I won, I was pleasantly surprised. But when the club called me harsh in my first evaluation practice during Valentine's week, it was like hearing shame, shame from Game of Thrones. The club didn't break up with me by replacing me with an experienced member. Instead, it patiently taught me the sandwich method. 1 week later, I learned to move on. And I move on with metaphors. So I learned to move on with metaphors. Now, I thought it would be fun for me and the audience to have metaphors or similes for prepared speeches and evaluation after hearing a member hearing a member use it in a club meeting for a timer's report. So at the area contest, I said that the test speech made me realize that the Toastmaster speeches was just like milk tea. Then 2 weeks later, at the division contest, I asked, have you ever wondered what a table topics evaluator would have wished for if he had a genie? Everyone called me Toastmaster Aladdin. I said, I had 3 wishes granted in one test speech. Question for everyone. Have you ever received a speech evaluation or an office performance feedback, then asked, what does it all mean? Should I feel happy? Should I feel sad? Should I feel nothing? Did the suggestions make you feel bad at all? Well, I have. Which is why the kind of metaphors I chose in club meetings should do 3 things for the speaker. 1, integrate all comments. 2, give a good feeling about the speech overall. And 3, instantly make recommendations desirable. With milk tea evaluation, for example, the speaker would know that her speech is a delicious mix of positives and would likely want toppings, which are what I call my recommendations. Other metaphors I've used are halo-halo, champorado, rock song, and plants versus zombies. Contest-wise, you may get points for motivational technique, which is 15% in the judges' criteria, and you could also stand out because, as I've learned about 3 months later, rarely anyone else does a metaphor for an evaluation speech. Right. Now, after the division contest, I did my icebreaker and began pathways. It wasn't until May did I resume evaluation practice. On May 3, just 2 days after winning first runner-up at the International Speech Contest, Jamie Yaneza kindly agreed to coach me. And since she's a teacher by profession, she immediately gave me homework to do. Jamie Yaneza told me to list words and phrases that encourage a speaker, including transitions, and and expressions that didn't make recommendations sound like weaknesses. So I did. Why? Because evaluation, just like love, hurts. That's why we don't use the word but. And aside from not using buts, we could also use positive adjectives like, the usual inspiring or say remarkable. We also use transitions from positives to recommendations like the usual to improve, and then prefaces to recommendations like to make it more special, and then use euphemisms like you should enunciate more instead of saying don't eat your words to the speaker. Also, we are also reminded most of the time to give motivational endings like, we're looking forward to your next speech. The goal is to make the speaker feel happy at the end of the evaluation. Contest-wise, this counts towards technique in the judging criteria, and having a list saves you time, saves you from accidental harshness, even saves you from cliches like to the next level. Now, in analyzing the speech, we use familiar parameters. We use familiar parameters, and some of these are what is recommended by the Toastmasters International, the see, hear, and feel. And then what I used when I was starting out, the one proposed by DTM Gabi Gobalawag, which is the verbals, vocals, visuals, and value. DTM Gabi is the first runner-up in the 2017 district evaluation contest to when Jamie won it. And then also DTM John Todorovic, who is the Division G director, who also kindly later coached me, teaches the COD parameters. Content standing for attention, interest, desire, action, which is the familiar IDA. And then organization, which is the flow of the speech. So you look at the introduction, the body, transitions, and the conclusion. And finally, you look at the delivery by looking at specifically the gesture, language, enthusiasm, and voice. Even with these, however, it was very hard to come up with recommendations that were would significantly improve a speech. Recommendations that were not petty at all. Also, it was difficult to come up with positive comments that noticed all the effort that the speaker put into crafting the speech. And even if I had points, my problem was I didn't know what to include or exclude. So I began to panic. Panicked for a long while. And the problem with the newbie is that I didn't have enough experience to analyze speeches. So what I did was, I researched and made my own list. I made my own list 2 weeks before the contest. And these are, there you go. All right. It's a long list, but in writing it down while listening to the prepared speeches stuff. So because you can only start writing and making your notes when the test speaker starts delivering the speech. So when the test speaker delivers the speech, I start writing down this long list, and that takes a little bit of time. I don't have a good memory to memorize all these things, so I have to write them down. And so it's tough. But it's important for me because it at least reflects what I personally believe are important to a speech. First, generate excitement, because without that, people won't even be listening to you. Second is ensure that your messaging is good. Otherwise, whatever it is that you're trying to say wouldn't get across. And finally, authenticity, because as research shows, it's the only way by which the audience would really get impacted by your speech. Content-wise, this helps with analysis and recommendations, which total 70%. Now, since the district contest, I have resumed pathways and completed level 2. If there's one thing I did learn from joining the evaluation contest, it is kindness. Kindness, as I found out when I started with being brutally honest, I thought that was the secret to a good evaluation based on my traumatic experience from the office. But it turns out a good evaluation is a kind evaluation. In preparing for this contest, my coach, Jamie Yanesa, would always tell me, to ignore basically the fact that I'm joining a contest. What we should focus on is giving a good evaluation as best as we can. And I've always wondered, what is a good evaluation anyway? It turns out, based on my experience, a good evaluation is a kind evaluation. And a kind evaluation is one that takes into consideration what the test speaker has gone through in crafting the speech, and thinking about how you could develop the speaker further and sincerely at that. It's not just, spouting out a number of comments that may come across your mind. It's really appreciating what the speaker tried to do with the speech, and noticing all of these things, telling the speaker, I noticed that you did this, yes, and I think that's a good idea. Also, the kindness, also learned kindness from the Toastmasters community. I'm new here, and I didn't realize that, there are a lot of people who are willing to give help for free. And they're kind enough to give their time, just teaching me stuff. Clubs, when I club hop, giving me slots. They're kind, really kind. Shout out to Synergy Toastmasters, a club in Baguio, who was really kind enough to give me a lot of comments, a lot of tips a week before the contest. Really helped me. And of course, my club for being patient and kind with me. I think in the end, if we have to think about what's the most important with evaluation, or at least with the kind of culture that we should encourage in Toastmasters and the world, it's kindness. It's a timely thing that we should think about when we think about other people, and it's timely as well when we think about what kind of culture we would want to have on a long-term basis in Toastmasters. Kindness is free. Let's pass it on. I hope you learned something from my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, TM Ruben. That was a wonderful sharing of experience. And you are right when you said that kindness is the key, right? So being harsh may not actually help in the way that you wanted it to be. But in Toastmasters, we try to be as kind as possible to help the person improve and grow. So thank you so much again, TM Ruben, for your experiences. Let me just call on our next speaker. Hold on. She is the champion for District 75 2019 evaluation contest from Sinulog TMC and Queen City TMC. Let's give it up for TM Pria Chiongbian.
All right. Good morning, fellow Toastmasters and friends. Just a quick check. Can everybody hear me clearly? Yeah.
Yes, we can.
All right. So for today, just to add to what Toastmaster Ruben shared, I will be focusing on how we can best structure our evaluation speeches. And we only have 2 to 3 minutes. So how do we make the most out of these 2 to 3 minutes? So let me share my screen for a bit. Okay, so again, my talk or my portion will be focused mainly on structuring and pacing. So first things first, when we talk about structuring or creating a structure in our evaluation pieces, it involves two things. First is organizing your notes, and second is the structure of your evaluation piece per se. It's very important that we organize our notes or have a certain structure for our notes because we only have 5 minutes to prepare, right? So for 5 minutes, you will be wasting a lot of time if you will be using it to understand your notes, to organize everything. Okay, so let me share with you two formats, two different formats that best organize our notes. So first format is, both formats actually involve us folding the paper into two. So the first format is writing on one column the positives and on the other column the points for improvement. So Toastmaster Ruben already shared about the COD, content organization and delivery. So that's where we get the points from, and then we just arrange it as for the positives and the points for improvement. The second format, which is the one that I keep using or the one that I've been using, is this. On one column, it's the content organization and delivery. So be it a positive or a point for recommendation, I put it there, I categorize it. And then on the other side of the column is the introduction. It's usually where I write what the speaker's introduction was. And then the end as well, I also take note of how the speaker ended the speech, because then it will help me in creating my introduction and ending as well. And then the recommendations will be saved for the 5 minutes of preparation for when I pick out the important points from the left side, which I choose to mention during my evaluation speech. So yes, I believe that that's it for the organization of notes. These are just two of the common formats that we've been using, and I hope helps you as well. So let me just proceed to structuring of the speech per se. So we all know about the stack sandwich method, or we all know that when we deliver our evaluation and our feedback, we have to start and end with the positives. So a very common format, or a very common format that we've been using here in Division C is the kiss, kiss method. So metaphorically speaking, we kiss the speaker, giving the speaker the positives. basically it's where we give points for improvement, and then the kids again. We shower them with positives or more than just enumerating the positives and point for recommendation. We all have to remember, fellow Toastmasters, that our evaluation pieces are still speeches. So it still has an introduction, a body, and a conclusion, right? So introduction, you have to create impact. Now, there's a debate amongst mentors here. But one thing that I've learned and one thing that I've noticed that helped me is realizing that we can do away with the niceties. So if we lack time, if we feel like we're short on time on our evaluation piece, we can actually do away with the niceties. And just like how we start our prepared speeches, there's still a rule in evaluation. The first words that come out of your mouth should have an impact. All right. So starting with good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or greetings can be quite common, and you might lose the impact right from the get-go. So here are a few tips on how we can have an impactful opening. So first, remember my second tip on the intro, recommendation, and ending. If I feel that the speaker's introduction of the speech was very impactful, then I use it to my advantage. I start my evaluation the same way. If the speaker used rhetorical questions, then I start my evaluation the same way. So you can cheat off the speaker as to how the speaker started with the speech. Sometimes, if the speaker's speech contains events or it calls for greetings such as congratulations, happy birthday, then you can start off your evaluation with that if it's in the content of the speech. So those are just a few tips on how we can start or introduce our evaluation with an impact, right? So we proceed with the body. The body of our evaluation is usually where we find our points. So it's the kiss and the kick. So the positives and the points for recommendation. Now, when I first started with evaluation, I would have to agree with Toastmaster Ruben. Being nice is the best tip. We have to be nice, not just in Toastmasters, but in the world. The world needs kindness right now. When I first started evaluating, I focused on being nice that I lost the analytical quality of my evaluation pieces. Now, in a competition, if you've seen the judges' ballot or the judging criteria, analytical quality is 40%. So you have to be able to balance out being nice and being analytical. So I started off giving out evaluations with so much flowery words to the extent that I would usually go overtime, or the analysis and the analysis gets lost amongst the field of flowers that I was giving out. All right. So I have two tips on how we can best structure so that we don't get lost in all these flowery words. We get to maintain the analytical quality and we get to be memorable. All right. So first speech structure tip is acrostics. If you were able to witness the district competition last month or 2 months ago, around 3 of our speakers or contestants were using acrostics. I believe Toastmaster Craig used the acrostics rainy. Now, acrostics is helpful because you pick out one word from the speakers or from the speech that stood out And then that's how you structure your speech. So for example, since we're talking about eval, let's use eval as an acrostic. So E, emphasis. I like how you were able to give emphasis to your message. V, value. I appreciate the values that you shared with me today. A, action. Now, with the message and the value, I would really love to know what concrete action I can do to carry out your message. But L, love. You showed me love today by sharing with me a beautiful message. Something like that. That was just at the top of my head, but yes. When we use acrostics, it also helps us to remember. So that way we don't have to look into our notes more often. So again, we pick out one word that stands out from the speaker's speech, and then we use it to structure the points that we want to mention. Now, the second speech structure tip is the use of 3 E's. Now, this is something that I came up by myself, but the 3 E's basically means first, emphasized point, second is your explanation, and third is your example. So when we give out our points, positive points and points for improvement or recommendations, we start the paragraph with the emphasis point, emphasize, love your message. Or perhaps for the recommendation, you can give out limitation. I would recommend that you limit your stories to 2 to 3. That way, you are able to, and then so on and so forth, your explanation as to why this recommendation would help. And
All right. While we are still waiting for TM Pria to troubleshoot her connectivity on her end, you may think of your questions and send them on the chat box, so our speakers will be able to answer them later on our Q&A session. Okay, let me just check her status.
hi, I'm terribly sorry. The internet connection here is unstable. May I ask, what was the last portion that you heard from me?
3 E's, about the 3 E's.
All right, 3 E's. Thank you. All right, going back to the 3 E's. So again, we start with a emphasized point. So it's important that when we're giving out a point, the first words that the audience or the speaker hears is your main point. That's why it's called emphasized point. We put emphasis on it. So, and then we proceed with the explanation and example. So whether you use the acrostics, because even in the acrostics, right, if you notice, we still mention the point first, which the letter stands for. So E, emphasis, or V, value. So whether you use the acrostics or the 3 E's, the signposting helps us to become memorable. Now, why is it important to structure our evaluation pieces to ensure that we are memorable? First is for the speaker. Now, a lot will go on throughout the day, and although they have their evaluation sheets, they will get a copy of it. It's also important for them to remember the main point. So emphasizing the point before proceeding with the explanation or giving out your acrostics helps the speaker remember better. Next thing, especially for competitions, when you give out your point first, the audience and the judges may remember you better. So in competitions, because in competitions, we're all evaluating the same speakers, we might be giving out the same evaluations. There's at least, during our time, because there was a semifinals, there were 6 of us per round. This year, there were 13 evaluators. It's highly important to make an effort to be memorable. So these 2 tips, or basically signposting, helps you to, or helps people to remember your points better. Okay, so we proceed with the next portion, which is the conclusion. The conclusion is where we give the biggest kiss. So we have points, positive points, right? And we start giving it out at the start of our body. Personally, I like to save the best for last. So whichever positive point I feel would be the best that the speaker did, I save it for the conclusion. So save the biggest kiss for the conclusion. It helps you to wrap up your evaluation piece positively, and it helps you end on a beautiful manner and a more motivating manner. So there are some tips that we summarize everything that we've mentioned so far. So you give a run through of the positive points and the points for recommendation. You may do it if time permits. Now, if you see the judges' criteria again, there's a portion there that says summation. Summation does not necessarily mean we mention everything from top to bottom. That's when we do signposting. Mention everything again, and display. I feel like it can waste my time. But if you can see that you still have time based on the timing device, then by all means you may do so. Again, it's not a must. So the summation in the judges' criteria is basically you can do a summation through a quote, you can do a summation through motivational words. Now, again, we get to cheat off our speaker when we give our conclusion. How did the speaker end her speech? It's a good way to end your evaluation piece. Or perhaps, was there a motivating soundbite or motivating words that the speaker kept repeating? You can throw it back to the speaker. So speaking or continue delivering your message or sharing your message because you have what it takes. Again, you throw back the motivation that the speaker gives to them. All right. So again, we get to cheat off the speaker. Now, usually when we say cheating, it's negative. For evaluation, when we cheat off the speaker, it's actually positive on two points. First, we level with the speaker. We get to level with the tone. So the tone of the speaker, if the tone of the speaker is humorous, we get to level with the tone of the speaker, and we get to throw in some humors that possibly the speaker used. Second thing is it shows that you're listening. It shows that you got important points, and it shows appreciation. Because as a speaker, I would highly appreciate it if the evaluator was really listening through and through. All right. So that is it for the structuring of both your note and your evaluation piece. There are a lot of tips and tricks on how to do what worked best for me and how I help for pacing. Again, we only have 2 to 3 minutes. So I would recommend that you start with only 2 to 3 positives. If you want to give out more, you can save it for your conclusion. And approximately 3 recommendations. 3 recommendations is important, not just because of the power of 3s, but because it's for time. It saves you time, and most importantly, human mind can only process so much. So 3 recommendations to focus on would help the speaker process your feedback and would help the speaker apply it. All right. So there are some speeches when you feel like there's so many things that we can recommend. We're excited to share them. Help the speech become better, but we again prioritize and choose the 3 most important points. And a tip for the competition: when the light is green, you should be on your recommendations already, or better yet, halfway through. It gives you more time to conclude powerfully, and it ensures, or it helps you deliver without having to rush through your pieces. It gives you time to pace your words as well. Okay, so Toastmaster from our division to help us prepare for a competition. So just to share our best practice efficiency, first is to focus on 3 minutes of preparation. It helps with the adrenaline, and during competition time, it means you have extra 2 minutes to and to train our ears to listen to different accents. And the third best practice when you are doing this is that the contestant usually delivers an evaluation piece. So those are a few best practices that we have for you prepare for an evaluation. So that ends my presentation this morning. I hope I was able to share tips and tricks on how to structure and pace. Back to you, Toastmaster Day.
Thank you so much, TM Priya, for that. How would I describe it? It's very packed, and I learned a lot, really, really a lot. Thank you for the technicalities that you shared with us on how we can structure and face our evaluations, and also the best practices that you've learned throughout the years of evaluating. Truly, you are a champion evaluator. So thank you so much for that. Um, we are in for more knowledge and more experiences from our champion evaluators today. So I will not delay it any further. I will call our third speaker. Hold on. He is the champion District 75 2020 Evaluation Contest champion from Makati Toastmaster Club, Impact Toastmaster Club. Let's give it up for TM Craig Manabal.
Thank you, Toastmaster Sha. I must say I miss being surrounded by Nielsen Philippines Toastmasters Club members, and I am glad to be able to share with you today some tips and tricks of how to be a better evaluator. So I agree definitely with the points of our first two speakers, Toastmaster Ruben, on talking about having that personal style and personal checklist of what to look at when speaking as an evaluator. And of course, with Toastmaster Priya, we always have to have structure in our evaluations or in any speech at that. What I will be sharing with you today is what I believe and what my mentors and coaches believe is the most important thing about evaluation. The most important thing about evaluation is your speaker. And that goes for anything, even evaluations or critiques outside of Toastmasters. What's most important is the person that you are critiquing, the person that you are sharing your knowledge and your comments to. So I will share with you three main things that I look at whenever I give an evaluation. The first thing that I look at whenever we have an evaluation is the objectives of the speaker, or outside Toastmasters, the objective of the task that the person is doing. So I will give you a very basic example. If I was tasked to clean the house or my room, and I was wearing this, if let's say my mother or my father came in and critiqued me and said, don't wear that, wear something else, it would be less likely for you as a listener to listen to that, right? Why? Because it's not exactly the objective. If you were to give me some critique about how I sweep or how I mop, then I might listen because it is something that's related to what I'm doing. Similarly, in Toastmasters, each and every speech, whether it be legacy program, which we no longer have, or a pathways program, we always have an objective for our speech. For instance, our icebreaker speech, the only objective is to introduce yourself and to learn the basic structure of a public speech. So when you give your recommendations, most probably, and I would recommend that you stick to the objectives. How can you better introduce yourself? And how can you better organize that speech to make it a more structurally sound speech? That means that each and every task outside of Toastmasters or each and every speech within Toastmasters should have a different evaluation. You could be evaluating the same speech, but with different objectives for each speech level. You should be able to alter your evaluation to fit that need of the speaker based on the objectives of the speech. And I'm saying this more importantly because there are a lot of evaluators here that I have seen who honestly I used to be part of, who regardless of what that objective would be, I would have the same pattern. I would look at the same things. And and I always evaluate a speech as if it was coming from one of the more experienced Toastmasters. And what happens then is that the earlier Toastmasters, people who haven't been here for such a long time, they get a little bit turned off. They get a little bit shocked at how much is expected of them. And because of that, I do recommend for each and every evaluator there to look at the objectives of the speech. And to everyone who are non-Toastmasters, whenever you give critique to someone, look at what exactly you are critiquing. Start to focus on that. That is my first point for today. The second thing that I would like to discuss with you is the background of the speaker, or outside of Toastmasters, the background of the person. Now, let me give you another example. Imagine you just started a job at a company that you aren't exactly familiar with. For instance, if you are, let's say, a communication graduate and you were hired as an HR person for an IT company, and then your boss tells you, why don't you understand any of the technicals that our personnel are reporting to you? It feels a little bit disheartening because you're not supposed to know these. That's not your background. Similarly, in Toastmasters, when we look at a speaker and give them recommendations, we should also note their background. For instance, if you know that each and every pathway that we will be having or we will be partaking in, we have to use or we have to give an icebreaker speech. That's 11 icebreaker speeches that we have to give. And each and every time, it has the same objectives as I've mentioned a while ago. They have the same objectives. However, us as speakers, we continue to grow. We become more experienced. And that's where you insert the background of the speaker. You inject that into the basis of your evaluation. For someone who's done, for instance, my division director, Distinguished Toastmaster Donnie, has done 11 paths and actually repeated 3 of them. If I were to hear him make another icebreaker speech, I would definitely take into consideration that this is a distinguished Toastmaster who is doing an icebreaker speech. So even if it is an icebreaker speech where the only objective is for you to introduce yourself, I would be mentioning things like the use of stage, the props that were used, vocal variety, and things that are for a more advanced speech because my speaker is someone who is actually more experienced than any other icebreaker speeches that I would have heard. So this is something that I hope everyone takes into consideration. The same speech from the same speaker can have different evaluations depending on what the background of that speaker is. So if I were to do my 11 icebreakers, all the same speech, all the same manner, I hope that for the succeeding times I do my icebreaker speech, it will have a more direct or a higher standard. Therefore, a little bit more harsh on the evaluations, a little bit more nitpicking here and there. But that's for my second point, the background of the speaker. Lastly, my third point that I always take into consideration whenever I evaluate is the focus of the speaker for new speakers or new Toastmasters, or the past evaluations for more experienced Toastmasters. Let me give you once more something that is outside Toastmasters for people to just understand a little bit more. So for instance, if I were someone who actually wanted to learn how to look more attractive or dress better, regardless of what my task is, I would always require or request my evaluator or people around me to note something about my good looks or fashion sense. And that is something that I would like to recommend for all of the evaluators here. Get to know your speakers. Get to know your speakers and ask them, what is it exactly that you are working on? I have seen some Toastmasters here who don't exactly want to learn about how to use their English language better, to expand their vocabulary. No, it's more of how they appear on screen or in front of an audience. How they look. Are they confident? Do they feel like they know what they're saying? So that is something that I get to know about my speakers before I evaluate them so that I can help them not just to move forward in Toastmasters, but also to get exactly what they needed. The reason why they joined Toastmasters. It is a reminder for all of us that Toastmasters is a place for all of us to grow. And that's why I recommend that we help our speakers. Much like in the corporate sense, where we help our employees, we help our subordinates, and we help everyone around us grow alongside us. After all, Toastmasters is a place where leaders are made. And with that, I hope that we help take our speakers to the next level, to lead them to greater heights. And just to to accentuate that, for more experienced speakers, I'm sure that we have DTMs in the room. It would help us to look at their previous evaluations. So if you would remember our pathways, level 1, project 2.2, that's evaluation and feedback, applying previous feedback. This is something that I think if evaluations are done correctly, the more experienced speakers would appreciate. Why? Because they would track their progress if they are getting to their goals. So going back to my non-Toastmasters example, if I want to be more attractive and have better fashion sense, then a few months from now, if someone were to tell me, hey, you're looking cute today, then my benchmark is I always have to look cute. Maybe a year from now, someone will tell me, hey, Craig, you're looking handsome today. That will be a level up. So the same thing in Toastmasters, if we get the evaluations that we need, for example, vocal variety, then if in a few months I hear someone commend my vocal variety, then that's something that will make me feel like I have grown in Toastmasters. So once more, it's one way to tailor fit your recommendations and your evaluations for people inside and outside of Toastmasters. So just a recap of my 3 things that I look at whenever I give evaluations. The first is the objective of the speaker or the task outside of Toastmasters. The second is the background of the person that you are evaluating or critiquing. And the third is the focus of the person that you are evaluating or you are critiquing, as well as their past critiques, judgments, or evaluations. I would like to end with something that my mentor, Distinguished Toastmaster Jason Bremon, and my head coach for the evaluation championship or contest, Toastmaster Bodge Garcia, with the help of everyone else, they all say one thing. Other than you're ready, they always tell me, remember, it's not a competition to win the evaluation contest. It's a competition to give your speaker the best evaluation and the best room for improvement that you can give. With that, I return the control of the proceedings to our Toastmaster of the day. Toastmaster Shaq?
Wow, that is so much information from TM Craig, our champion evaluator. Um, I would just like to share a story. My icebreaker speech was actually evaluated by Craig. So thank you so much for that, TM Craig. Truly, the most important thing about an evaluation is the speaker itself. Without the speaker, then we wouldn't be able to evaluate as well, right? So thank you so much. Another round of applause for all our 3 champion evaluators who have given their time, their effort, their knowledge, and all these stuff that would help us to be better evaluators in the future. I would now give the floor to our Q&A session to be moderated by TM Eunice Ebreo from Impact Toastmaster Club. So, TM Eunice, take it away, please.
Hi, thank you, TM Sha. All right, good morning, fellow Toastmasters, and good morning to our speakers. Before we start the Q&A portion, I would like to thank our speakers today for the very informative and helpful lessons that they have shared for today's learning session. Before we start, someone asked in the chat if TM Priya, if it's all right, can you summarize your last tips on the last part of your talk since your connection broke up a little?
For the best practices at the end.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So basically, to help first,
Yes. Yes, thank you, TM Priya. For the one who asked the clarification, please check the chat box for TM Priya's answer. All right. So, as a new Toastmaster myself, I have really looked forward for this learning session. And as usual, our seasoned Toastmasters never really disappoint. We have learned a lot today from uh, from structuring your speech to the things that you should consider when evaluating, to using metaphors and personal parameters, and the use of positive language. And because evaluation is such an interesting topic, a lot of questions from our audience poured in earlier. Without further ado, let us start with the first question. So the first question is for all of our speakers. Have you experienced evaluating speeches that you know for a fact have not met their objectives? And if so, how did you communicate this to the speaker through your evaluation? Let's start with TM Craig. TM Craig, have you experienced evaluating speeches that you know for a fact have not met their objective? And how did you communicate it to the speaker?
For once, I wish I wasn't called first. But to answer the question, yes, I did have some speakers who were not able to actually deliver what is asked of them for the speech
Mm.
objectives. And to be honest, the very first time that it happened, it was also nerve wracking for me because how do you tell someone that you didn't do what was asked of you, especially in a non professional setting? So I did what any sane person would do. I pretended I had an emergency and left. No, I'm kidding. I actually messaged my mentor and some of my close Toastmasters friends, and DTM Marcus Sky would be able to account for this. I've asked him many times how I would tell the speaker that they did not meet their speech objectives. So the recommendation for me was always to connect it to the next speech. So for instance, if if we are looking at level 1 project 2.2, which is evaluation and feedback, applying the feedback, and I'm using this because everyone should know what that is by now. So when someone is not able to apply the feedback that was given to them during the first pass of that speech, the recommendation would be, now how could you apply the feedback from your first speech if you were to apply it to your research and presenting speech? So connect it to the next speech while telling them in a very nice way, as we do in Toastmasters, that we actually recommend for them to redo the speech because the objectives were not met, while merging it with their next speech, if possible. So that's something that I've learned from few people, how to tell our speakers that they did not actually fulfill their objectives without telling them that they did not fulfill their objectives. I hope that helped. Back to you, panel moderator.
Thank you, TM Craig. That's really helpful. TM Ruben, have you ever experienced this, evaluating someone who have not met their objectives? And what did you do to communicate it to the speaker?
Thank you. Let me describe the situation first, right?
Mhm.
So I was asked to guest evaluate a speech, which was a speech project that belonged to the legacy program. And that particular project requires some prep work to be done, meaning work outside of the speech itself, right? And the speaker is supposed to inform everyone that the prep work was done. Uh, I didn't have, when I joined I was only informed of that task of evaluating the speech only when I joined the meeting. So I didn't have the time to ask the speaker if he did the prep work. And when I listened to the speech, he didn't mention the prep work at all. So on the question of whether or not the speaker met the objectives, I don't know that for a fact. It might have been possible that the speaker did, but did not mention that in the speech, forgot about it or whatnot. And also, I didn't really know what to do if, meaning, should the evaluator pass judgment? Should an evaluator say, hey, look, you didn't pass objectives. I don't know. I haven't learned that particular aspect of evaluation yet. So what I did was, because I still have to point it out, right? Because as Craig mentioned in his speech below, when you're evaluating during a club meeting for a speech project, your first task is to check if the speech objectives were met. So I just said, this project requires these things, this, and that. I assume that you did all these. Now, please let me know if you didn't. And then went on and continued the speech. That way, I got it on record what he did and did not do. But as to whether or not I gave him the chance to say otherwise, explain right after the meeting, whether to the club or to whoever judges these things, at least would have the opportunity to explain. I don't know what the process is like, if somebody doesn't fulfill the objective, if who gets to say that the speaker should repeat or not, I don't know. Because after delivering my evaluation for that speech project, I had to immediately leave the meeting to attend the briefing for the contest. So I wasn't able to finish the meeting. I didn't know what happened afterwards.
I see. Thank you, TM Ruben. And then, TM Priya, have you experienced evaluating speeches that have not met their objectives? And what did you do to communicate them?
Okay. As for me, yes, I've experienced evaluating speeches that have not met their objectives. But to make sure that the speaker doesn't feel too down about it, or to maintain the positive environment of a meeting, I stick with a few critical recommendations during my evaluation speech and chose to speak with the speaker personally and gave the speaker an option to redeliver the speech the next meeting, or they can send me a copy of their revised speech should they wish to move on to or deliver a different speech in the next meeting or proceed with our other projects. So it was done more privately, just to ensure we don't get the negative impacts from the speaker. That's it for me.
Thank you, TM Priya. So, for our Toastmasters, our speakers recommended that we should recommend to the speaker that they redo and connect it to the next speech. And according to TM Priya, we should speak to them privately so to avoid embarrassing them, I guess. So let's move on to the next question. This question is from TM Len from Impact Toastmasters. Do you find some speeches to be difficult to evaluate, like highly emotional speeches or perfectly written and delivered speeches? What can we do in such situations? Let's start with TM Ruben this time. TM Ruben, have you experienced this evaluating difficult speeches, like highly emotional speeches or perfectly written speeches?
Yes to both. For the highly emotional speeches, during my area contest and in one guesting for a club meeting, in the area contest, when I heard the test speaker, he delivered an inspiring speech, but the speech was a bit sad, as most inspiring speeches do. I was surprised. It got me down. I couldn't think much actually, because I felt really sad as well. But and it happened to me in another occasion when the speech I heard was a eulogy for a relative, which I didn't even know that it was going to be a eulogy. So again, it was difficult. Well, until now, I assume that I would still have that difficulty. What you just have to do, I think, is just to focus. That you get to a point where you focus on the task at hand and see what kind of comments that you could give for the speeches. Now, but the more difficult ones really are the really excellently written, as you said, and excellently delivered speeches, because what else could you say? Which is why my response to those kinds of speeches when I was practicing, it happened to me a lot, is to just research a lot, research As I mentioned a while ago, I made my own long list. That way, I could always find something to talk about, and you'd be surprised. And I think as your experience grows, listening to speeches attentively, and you become sensitive to a lot of things, even with uh, even with uh, even with your personal preferences, you'd be surprised that you'd always have something to say. Just one last thing. When I was having this difficulty and I asked my coach, now Division G director, Jan Todorovic, what to do, he he gave me this. He asked me this simple question. So he said, "What's your favorite TV show?" So I said, "Oh, it's Boston Legal." "What do you like about it?" So I said, "Well, the courtroom drama." "What do you like about the courtroom drama?" And the next question was, if you had to create the episode yourself, what would you have done differently? It, to these questions, I readily had answers, and that could provide a framework for everyone. It's sometimes it may just be based on personal taste. Your whatever it is that you want to say about the speech, you just go by instinct, what you felt, what you saw, and then just say what it is that's on your mind. Because as they say, and as I found out, everyone is entitled to one's own opinion. So in evaluation, surprisingly, well, not surprisingly perhaps, in scoring analysis and recommendations, I don't think judges really look at what you say, or if the points you made are valid or not. What they look at is how specific you are, how you analyze the speech, how you point a particular parameter and say this is how this is effect on the speech, and this is how you could probably change it. But so you don't have to worry about giving just a personal opinion about the speech, because it's fine. Toastmasters doesn't look at that. It's your analysis that counts.
How about you, TM Priya? What do you think about this? TM Priya?
Yes, sorry. I experienced evaluating both highly emotional speeches and uh, very well written speeches. So first, for the highly emotional speeches, yes, it can be difficult to give our feedback on that. But the best tip that I can give for highly emotional speeches is to stick with the technicalities of speech writing. So the content, organization, and delivery, what were the strong points, and to veer away from the emotions that were given, or probably just notice or mention it a bit. But yeah, to stick with the technicalities. Now, for very well written speeches, I usually find it difficult to give recommendations then, until such time that a mentor told me that you don't actually have to find something wrong with the speech, but rather, once you've practiced evaluation so much, you've you kind of get your own stock of points already. So maybe you can suggest other points that they might want to explore on, although they already, for example, the delivering of the message. They did it so well, but you might suggest other means and ways of delivering the message, probably repeating it, probably mentioning it at the beginning. So for recommendations, it doesn't have to be finding what's wrong, but probably alternatives that they can look into that they may have not considered yet. Yes, that's it for me.
Thank you, TM Priya. How about you, TM Craig?
Yes, so actually, I did have this experience while I was preparing for this year's contest. I had a speaker who's actually in the room. Hi, Toastmaster Andrea from Tops Toastmasters Club, who club hopped in Makati Toastmasters and gave this amazing speech. It was both highly emotional and very well written. Up until this day, when people ask me, have you ever heard an icebreaker speech or an early speech that left you dumbfounded? It was Toastmaster Andrea's speech. So even while we had our 5-minute break, I kept asking myself, what do I have to give to this person who has just started her Toastmasters journey a few months ago? So actually, my recommendation to everyone is as evaluators, we usually have two sides of the paper, as Toastmaster Priya mentioned. We have the commendations and recommendations. My personal style, when I evaluate, at least in my head, on the paper it looks the same. In my head, it looks like what is the worst and what is the best. And then I usually comment on the extremes. The bests would be my commendations. The worsts would be my recommendations. In cases where our speaker seems to be holistic, full, nothing else to add, I nitpick. I make that smaller and smaller until it becomes somewhat like a better and best. Even with the best speakers out there, they are better at some portions than they are at others. So to become a better speaker, you can get what you already have that is great and make it greater. So that would be my recommendation. And for highly emotional speeches, I try my best not to touch on the content. Because if it is highly emotional, it also means it is highly personal. And that means I would not dare tell them how to tell their story. I would then focus more on the organization, how to bring that message forward, and the delivery, how to make your audience understand your message. So that would be my answer, and I hope I was able to give that justice. Back to you, panel moderator.
Thank you, TM Craig. All right. So since we have a lot more questions, and in the interest of time, I'll move on to the next question. This question is also for all of our speakers today. This is from TM Lindry from ADB TMC. The time allocation for an evaluation speech is limited. How would you recommend to manage the 3-minute allotted time to deliver an effective speech? TM Priya?
Yes, so to manage the 3-minute time allotment, as I mentioned earlier, I would recommend to prioritize your commendations and recommendations, or your positive points and points for improvement. So limiting yourself to 2 to 3 best positive points or best points and 2 to 3 recommendations would allow you time to expound on each and will help the speaker process better as well. Also, we don't have to repeat all portions of the speech because we were already there to hear, or the audience were there, they heard the speech. So you don't have to quote the speaker again and again. That saves you a lot of time as well. So you don't have to repeat the speech. Basically, just stick to your points that you would like to share. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, TM Priya. TM Craig, how about you?
Yeah, so to add to TM Priya's point, I do have a few things that I do in my evaluation practices. With TM Priya's example of two commendations and 3 recommendations, that's a total of 5 points. I give myself approximately 30 seconds for each. And I try to finish that point within the time limit of 30 seconds. I try to make sure it's like 29 seconds, 28 seconds per point. That way, I finished well before the 2.5-minute mark. So that's before the timer turns yellow. Then I have 30 seconds to wrap up. And also to include, let's say, an introduction at the beginning or a summary at the ending. Or maybe one more point for my commendations at the ending. That way, even if I do go a little bit over time, I'm well within the 3.5 minutes of the time limit. And I also noted from all of my coaches and all of my mentors for this contest that they tell me that you can either explain, elaborate, or give an example. They try to keep it within time. So if you give an example, it should be enough to explain why you gave that recommendation. Otherwise, your explanation should be sufficient so that you don't have to give an example. I hope that helped. Over to you, panel moderator.
Thank you, TM Craig. How about you, TM Ruben?
Well, the short answer is 30 seconds each. There are 3 recommendations, 30 seconds per recommendations. That's 1.5 minutes. 1 minute for recommendations. And I'd like to leave the rest of the time for summary. And this is based in part on the judges' criteria. If you look at the ballot, the criteria, the most number of points is given to recommendations at 40%. So you have to spend most of your time giving your recommendations. And since there's a fixed percentage as well given to summary, you want to give yourself a good enough amount of time also for the conclusion. The reason why you'd like to give a hefty amount, say a minute or so, or you start wrapping up, as Toastmaster Pria said a while ago, you start wrapping up at 2.5, 30, it's because you don't know during the contest, if you'll actually have enough time. But you'd want to hit that 15%, right? So you give enough time. Also, and this has been a problem for me because until the last week before the contest, I was going overtime a lot. Elaborating points is very difficult. What I suggest you do is but this depends on personal style, of course, but ultimately what you'd like to do is to write a formula for yourself based on your personal style of explaining. How would you make a compact elaboration explanation of your point within the time that you allot yourself? If you allot yourself 30 seconds for one recommendation, then you write a formula in explaining whatever your point is within the 30-second parameter. So for instance, in my case, I state a signpost, the first recommendation. I demonstrate immediately, and then if possible, if there's time, I'd say I'd point out one positive aspect of the speech and would connect that to the recommendation, and then explain at the end why that recommendation would be good for the speech. So I calculated that and practiced that a bit, of course, and ultimately it worked, at least on the day of the contest.
Thank you, TM Ruben. All right. I will ask our second to the last question. And for those questions that I have not asked, maybe I can chat it in the chat box, and our speakers will try to answer them in the chat box. So the second to the last question is from TM Kirk from RailPage. What makes virtual evaluation so different from a live or face-to-face session? Aside from the patterns and techniques shared by the speakers, are there any particular deliveries or styles that make virtual evaluations and as effective or better than face-to-face session? Let's start with TM Craig. TM Craig.
Whew, that is a difficult question, especially since evaluation is not exactly something that we're prepared to do much online. I'm sure this is true also in the professional setting. To answer the question, TM Kirk, one of the differences of evaluating here versus in person is it's a lot easier to make eye contact. And it's also a lot harder to make eye contact because you just kind of stare at that one small dot on your computer screen for 3 minutes, which is in a way easier because you don't have to pan the audience. But it's also harder because you feel like you're talking to a robot from Terminator or something like that. With that, it also makes it easier because modulation of your voice isn't as important because your microphones are right here. So it's a lot easier to speak without having to throw your voice to the back of the room. So I think in terms of how it is to speak in general, it's a lot easier online. The difficulty now comes with connecting with your audience on that next level. That was what I practiced a lot during this contest. How to connect to an audience that's not exactly there. How to talk to people who you can't really see their facial expressions. Are they irritated at you? Are they bored with your speech? Are they looking at their clocks, waiting for time to pass? So that's something that I think we all have to learn how to do to keep the audience engaged with us. And I think that's a difference here versus in person, because in person, everyone kind of has to be a little bit more polite and at least pretend to listen to you. That's it for me. Back to you, panel moderator.
Thank you, TM. How about you, TM Ruben?
Well, the good thing about it is you could evaluate, you could club hop, easily, which, because everything is done online, right? I wouldn't have had the opportunity of club hopping if it were done physically. But the problem with online is, as what happened to me during the contest, is all the technical difficulties, right? I began my contest with not being able to pin the timer. And the great amount of time really is the amount of time you're worrying about your internet connection, and getting disconnected. That happened a lot. And for the contest itself, you'd have to worry about, eye level, and a lot of things, audio, background, and so on. Because the problem with the contest, anyway, is because there are no established standards yet. For instance, do we sit? Do we stand? I find it one of the great difficulties I had at the beginning was standing in front of a camera when I'm doing it online. I felt it was very awkward, and I still don't know what's good or not, right? It's perfectly all right. I suppose it's during the club meetings, but contest wise, I don't know if it's perfectly all right to sit down. But I stood anyway for to be conservative, to be safe. But yeah, so it offers both opportunities for us as evaluators, but at the same time, we have to contend with technical difficulties and a lack of established norms as to what constitutes a good speech or evaluation online.
Thank you, TM Ruben. TM Priya, same question.
Yes, as for me, it's very similar to Toastmaster Ruben and Toastmaster Craig. So it's really more on the personalization aspect. I usually like to look at the person I'm evaluating because again, there's a more personal touch to it, actually speaking to the person. So the difficulty with a virtual platform is I'm looking at the camera and not the picture of the person. Or if I tend to forget and I look at the person, then I lose the eye contact. So that's the main issue. Second is technical difficulties, as what TM Ruben said. It's very difficult to evaluate a speech that has been cut off because of technical difficulties. But what I found, or what was helpful for me then, was to ask for a copy of the speech, or perhaps ask the speaker privately, again, to message me some portions that I didn't quite catch because of the technical difficulties. So yes, the main difference of the physical evaluations and the virtual is really the touch of personalization that we can have as an evaluator with the speaker. Back to you, moderator.
Thank you, TM Priya. And this is our last question. So for all of our speakers today, can you give us a final piece of advice that you'd like to give the audience to encourage them to take on the role of an evaluator? Let's start with TM Craig.
Okay, so my final piece of advice, remember why you joined Toastmasters. If you're a new Toastmaster, it's probably to improve your public speaking skills. And that's fine. When we become more seasoned, I would request that you remember all of those people who helped you. All of the people who helped you become the speaker that you are. And pay it forward. Learn that sometimes the best feeling in the world is helping others. And that's where the Toastmasters, tagline comes in, where leaders are made. You have become an empowered speaker. You have become a powerful speaker. You have become an effective speaker. Now lead. Help other people do the same. Help other people achieve the dreams that were once your dreams as well. Help them become the Toastmaster that you have become. And that can be achieved through the power of evaluations, if not through mentoring. That's it for me. Back to you, panel moderator.
Thank you, TM Craig. TM Priya.
Yes, as for me, my last piece of advice is to do it. Most of the hesitations that I hear or that I receive from fellow Toastmasters is that they're not sure if they give out the right points. So this advice goes for all of us. Don't sell yourself short and be confident enough to know that you know something, or be confident enough in what you know. That way, you are still able to give valuable pieces. just do it, because anyway, we are in an environment of learning. Mentors will always be there to help you deliver better and more successful evaluations. So you will never be able to get, or you will never be able to master evaluation if you just keep on listening. The best way is to learn by doing, and do so without selling yourself short. Back to you, moderator.
Thank you, TM Pria. TM Ruben?
Okay, I have 3 points. First, based on my experience, I think doing an evaluation and joining an evaluation contest also is the fastest way to learn public speaking. You know, when you do evaluation and you become diligent in trying to study what a good speech looks like, you know, and because to avoid also those instances when you don't want to offend the speaker, you don't want to, and you want to help the speaker, so you start becoming diligent in that, and so you learn more. Also, when you join, as I found out, when you join an evaluation contest and you're fortunate enough to become the club representative, I tell you, all the resources of the club and the Toastmasters organization will be poured onto you alone, you know, because you're the contestant. You wouldn't have, otherwise, you wouldn't have that kind of opportunity if you weren't a contestant, you know. You could probably ask people to help you, sure, but more people would be willing to give you the resources and their time and so on if you were a contestant. So if you want to accelerate your learning in public speaking in Toastmasters, then I suggest you do evaluations. One thing, and this I discovered right after the district contest, I wrote my next speech in level 2. And it just took me a few hours to write it because I already, based on my evaluation experience, I already knew what I was supposed to do in a speech, you know, structure, you know, this figure speech and so on. So if you want to learn the fastest way, you do an evaluation. Second is to realize that when they say that, you know, evaluation is the most important part of Toastmasters, that's true. I'm not sure if everyone realizes it because, well, I'm new here, but, and I don't want to offend anyone, with due respect, but I think the only comparative advantage of Toastmasters is the evaluation. You could learn public speaking somewhere else, but you don't have an audience. You don't have a lot of people commenting on you. You don't have people who are committed and dedicated to improving the craft of public speaking, except here in Toastmasters. And that's why if you become an evaluator, what you're doing is you're contributing to the organization. It's what I think what keep Toastmasters alive for so many years, and that is a significant contribution. Finally, as I mentioned in my speech, it's an opportunity for a random act of kindness. And how bad could that be? You know, it's free. You might as well spend your time telling somebody that he did a good or she did a good job in a speech, and you're confident that that person, as much as you have high expectations, you're confident that speaker would meet your expectations because you believe in his ability. You know, just a few imagine that 3.5 minutes, and you'll be leaving a great impact on somebody because you're just too kind. And being kind is really just what we need right now, you know, as individuals in our community and among us, humanity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to all of our speakers for answering our questions today. Fellow Toastmasters, I hope this question and answer portion help you in understanding further the beauty and magic of evaluation. Let's use the lessons that we have learned today and become top evaluators in the future, just like our speakers today. Thank you, everyone, and back to you, Toastmaster of the Day, TM Sha.
Thank you so much, panel moderator Eunice. Very, very great questions, and of course, very great, insightful answers from our esteemed speakers. So let us move on to this next exciting part of this session, the Learn and Grow session. A while ago, we had our volunteers. Just wanted to check if they're still here. TM Isael Isagan, TM Diane See, and TM April Rose Dellosa. I hope you're still there. All right. Okay. So let me just explain what will happen for the Learn and Grow session. Okay, hold on. Okay. So this okay, we have a set of speaker profiles which you will take into consideration when you evaluate the speech later of one of our Toastmasters. Okay, so please screenshot or take a note of this for our volunteer number 1, TM Isael Isagan. This is the speaker profile that you will take into consideration for your evaluation later. Okay, let me know if you've already screenshot or noted this one. Hold on, I'm lost. Okay. Okay, I'll move on to the next one. This is the next profile for volunteer 2, TM Dayan. Okay, please screenshot. This is your profile. I mean, the profile you will take into consideration for the evaluation later. Okay, next one, the last volunteer, TM April. This will be the profile of the speaker that you'll be evaluating later. Okay. So for the interest of time, hold on. We will be distributing the commenters or like the feedback session for these volunteers. Kindly take note, TM Craig, you will be commenting for TM Isael. Then TM Pria, you will be commenting for TM Dayan. TM Ruben, you will be commenting for TM April. Okay. So, without further ado, may I call on our sample speech performer or speaker for this day, TM Jonas Dupo of Makati Toastmaster Club. Take it away, TM Jonas.
Hey, can you hear me? I want to see a show of hands if you can hear me. Thank you. Yeah, perfect. Okay. Mr. Dupo, prepare the injection in the dextrose of your patient, instructed by my clinical instructor. And I was shivering. I was so afraid. And I replied, uh, um, yes, sir. And I saw stars around me. Everything turned black and I disappeared from the world. Toastmaster of the day, my fellow Toastmasters and distinguished guests, I'm a nurse by profession. And in my third year level of my nursing degree, I was exposed to the hospitals and patients, even if I'm scared to death. I am afraid of syringe and needle. Whenever I see a hospital, I shiver and sometimes I play dead. I am afraid of blood. I'm irritated when someone is crying. Guess what? Almost everyone in the hospital is crying. I am afraid of dead bodies. And guess what? I need to clean dead bodies before I hand it over to their family members. In the operating room, we wear cap, goggles, mask, gloves, gowns, and boots. The first time I saw nurses wearing and doctors wearing all of this, I thought that I am on Mars or in the moon. It looked like an astronaut and it terrified me. The first time I was exposed in the operating room, when I saw the blood rushing like a faucet, like water from a faucet, I was terrified. I almost fainted. But one by one, my classmates are started to faint. I was assisting in the operation and I requested for a Caesar. Then suddenly, my classmate disappeared. For a while, I thought that she was taken by an alien. And I saw her lying on the floor like a cockroach. These experiences happened a few decades ago, 1 decade or two. And after 3 years, out of 600 nursing graduates, I was awarded as the outstanding intern in our university. I was also awarded with academic excellence, and I was 5th place in the licensure examination for nurses in our region. And 7 years later, I am fast and trained in doing cardiopulmonary resuscitation. I'm also fast in hunting veins in your hands whenever you need an emergency medication. I was trying to look back at the faces of my fellow interns. We looked like wet chickens. I remember the fears on our faces, and I never imagined that I'll become a great nurse today. In my life, there were plenty of times when I was clouded by fears. Yes, I know you're afraid of injection and syringe, and I use it whenever my nephews and niece are disturbing me. But I want to talk about different fear. Fear in our lives when an opportunity for success knocks in. There were times when I want to start a business, but I'm so focused on my fears that maybe I'll become bankrupt. An opportunity maybe to marry a girl with cute dimples and almond eyes, but I lost it because I was so afraid to move and talk to her, even though my mom told me that I am handsome. An opportunity to join a huge dance competition to show off my Michael Jackson move, but I lost it because I was so afraid. Many people created a house of fear and they made it their sanctuary. When I became an emergency room nurse a few years ago, when I was working as an overseas Filipino worker in the Sultanate of Oman, injecting a medication, assisting in the operating room are just natural things for me. I was able to love the very thing that scares me the most, even though patients show that scary look whenever I bring out a huge syringe in front of them. I have plenty of fears. I was born from a very poor family, and I want to transform my life, our lives, into prosperity. My father is a construction worker, my mother is a housemaid, but I want to dream big dreams. And I observe that when I overcame my fears, I was able to start my own monkey business. Kidding aside, I was able to start my own real estate business. And I also founded my own consultancy business. I was able to seize every opportunity. I even became a singer from my bathroom to the stage of our prayer meeting. And I was standing here in front of you because I caught fear and crushed it. We can make a difference in this world if we allow our fears to be dissolved by faith, confidence, assertiveness, courage, and trust. Many people, maybe it's you, are not dreaming their dreams because of fear. Inject faith. Many paintings have not been created because of fear. Inject confidence. Many marriages are not happy because of fear of their wives and mother-in-laws, kidding aside, because of fear of rejection. Inject trust. Many books were not written because of fear. Inject faith. And many people who should have been standing here today, speaking in front of you, are not here because of fear. Inject courage. Today, let's not run away from our fears, but instead use it as our motivation to do the things that scare us the most. Because not a syringe, not a needle, not the negative criticisms that are thrown by other people against you, not color, not economic background, not family status, not fear. Nothing and no one can stop you from soaring high and living the best life that you deserve. Over to the Toastmaster of the day.
Wow, that was a very, very nice and very empowering speech, TM Jonas. I would like to be injected by all of those beautiful things that you've said.
Thank you.
Thank you so much again. Let me just check on our volunteers. If you are ready, is TM Isael here? I don't think he's here. Hold on. TM Isael, are you here? I think he's here. Okay. S- Yes, he is. He is here. Okay. Um, are you ready for your evaluation of the speech from TM Jonas? TM Isael? Okay, if you are ready, I'll give the floor to you. Okay, Craig, sorry, can you double check? He cannot start his video though. Okay, I think it's now working. TM Isael.
Oh, God. It was like I have seen a cockroach. Everybody captures it, and everybody seems to get all the energy. To our speaker, TM Jonas. Everybody can hear me?
Yes, we
Yes.
can.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, thank you. You are full of E. My gosh. Full of energy. Full of enthusiasm. What else can I say? For the first timer speaker, I would not think that you are a first timer. You're a pro. My God. Everybody captures you like a cockroach, and everybody seems to hook by your speech like that. Everybody, you captivate us. And it was very descriptive. I can feel like you are a not just a new, but you are exactly describe everything. All right. So what can I, as a new, I wouldn't say you're a new because it seems like you're a pro for me and for everybody who hears you. And for something that I perhaps I can help you to be better in your next speech is, of course, since you are full of energy, I can see that enthusiasm. I can see that you are into it. I would, it would be help to finally practice the power of pause so people would be have a time to reflect on what exactly the message you want to instill. Second, of course, um, I'd like you to have time to, since you always cut us, I would say you be more conversational in your approach. That would help you. People would not be intimidated in how you deliver your speech. So they would get connected to you. And of course, you have, I would say that your call of action is really powerful. You take us not just to overcome our fears, but of course to do something more. There's you give us some more tips on how to overcome your fears. In the end, Team Jonas, you did well as a new speaker. I believe there's more you can do, and you can inspire more people with your captivating personality. And I guess you're not you're just starting, but there's long way you can go as a professional speaker. Keep it up, TM Jonas, and I'm looking forward to hear from you more about your inspirational message and speaker. As a speaker, I hope you can inspire. I believe you can inspire more. Thank you.
Thank you so much, TM Isael, for that wonderful evaluation. You will be commented or will be evaluated by TM Craig.
Hello, TM Isael. I actually love this evaluation, so I will just share to everyone why this is a good evaluation. It's a good evaluation because Toastmaster Isael was able to incorporate the fact that our hypothetical speaker is new to Toastmasters and therefore probably has not been able to at least consciously include or incorporate all of our learnings as Toastmasters into his speech. So that's something that I liked about your evaluation, Toastmaster Isael. Thank you for being able to do that. Now, I do have just one recommendation for the future when we are evaluating new Toastmasters. I would like it if in the future you would consider having a more positive vibe in your explanation of why you have these recommendations for our speaker. I noticed a while ago while you were evaluating, you mentioned that Toastmaster Jonas should be or could be more conversational. The explanation for which is so that people are not intimidated. And in the future, if you were to do this exact evaluation again for a new time Toastmaster, you could actually reword this to something more friendly, such as I would recommend that you could be more conversational so that we will be able to be on the same level with you as an audience member and be able to connect more with your message. it says the same thing whilst not sounding as a bit of an attack or a pseudo compliment that's actually a backlashing, might be considered a bit offensive to say that Toastmaster Jonas is intimidating. Overall, I loved your evaluation, and I'm glad that you were able to take into consideration the background of the speaker, which just means that either you are a really great evaluator or you learned a little bit from my talk a while ago about taking into consideration the speaker's background as well. So with that, in the interest of time, I turn back over the proceedings to our Toastmaster of the day.
Thank you so much, TM Craig. Our next volunteer, TM Diane See. If you're there, please take the floor.
Congratulations for sharing your story, PM Jonas, this morning. And we have really noticed that you have been a Toastmaster for some time now, because the story and the way you delivered your speech was truly amazing and exceptional. I would like to share some positives or some strengths of your delivery this morning. I noticed that you shared us a personal story, and it's also relatable. You recounted the story of being a singer and a nurse, and emotions like fear, which are very human. I also noticed that you followed the progression in the organization 7 years ago, 10 years ago, 7 years ago. In your delivery as well, you were smiling, and you had displayed eye contact and good gestures. Now, as you want to relearn through pathways, here are some things I would suggest. I noticed that when you were delivering your speech, you were delivering it somewhat in a sing-song or melodious fashion. Perhaps you could pause a bit and inject a bit of severity as well, because this would make the speech a bit more serious. Also, we note for some portions, for example, you may mention terrified. You could perhaps look a bit more terrified and less smiles. An additional area for recommendation perhaps would be to be a bit more specific as well when you mention inject courage, inject faith, inject trust, inject confidence. How would you like to have this displayed? All in all, I would like to suggest an acronym for your future speech, perhaps SAVE, or AVE rather, AVE. A for actual, following what I mentioned earlier, to mention actual ways on how to inject faith, confidence. V for vocal variety, to inject pauses as well, and to inject a bit additional rather emotions. And the last for E is emotional. That is, I will commend that you were able to deliver your speech in a very relatable and manner that impacts the audience. It would also help if you injected the proper emotions in some of your delivery. All in all, thank you for delivering your speech, and we look forward to hearing more of you. Thank you. Good morning. Back to you, Toastmaster of the morning.
Thank you so much, TM Dayan, for that evaluation. You will be commented or evaluated also by TM Pria.
Okay. Good morning, Toastmaster Diane. So, first and foremost, I'd like to congratulate you. It was a very beautiful evaluation. It was heartfelt, it was sincere, and you got all the points that you wanted to share. You were able to explain it well. In the interest of time, I just like to mention one specific recommendation for you. It's to give me or give the speaker why you had such positive points, especially for the positives, because you mentioned good good positive points, such as his such as his emotions as well. So it's good to know why it was a positive point, so that it helps the speaker repeat such behavior, repeat such aspect the next time he delivers the speech. So, but all in all, I like your recommendations. It was straight to the point. You did not sugarcoat it, and you were able to clearly define what you wanted to see from the speaker while maintaining a positive language. Also, you were good to mention on his goal based on the profile that he wanted to relearn pathways. So you use that as a transitioning statement. So it's good because it clearly shows as well that you've taken into consideration what the speaker wants to learn from you. So all in all, Toastmaster Diane, it was I believe it was an effective evaluation. You were able to get the points right. Just give us, or for the next time you evaluate, I would highly appreciate it if you would tell me the whys, especially for the positive aspects or the positive points. Back to you, Toastmaster of the Day.
Thank you so much, TM Priya, for that wonderful comment on TM Diane's evaluation. Next, our next volunteer is TM April. She will be commented by TM Ruben later. TM April, if you're there, please take it.
Hello, distinguished Toastmaster. I also wanted to be a nurse, but I'm scared of the blood, so I can relate to your topic. It is a very good speech. I would really like to commend you on delivering a personal story that is very animated and enjoyable. I enjoyed how you presented it in a way that you got my attention from the beginning until the end. The topic of fear is also very relatable. I can sense that you really have this experience of writing good speeches. I also find the sense of humor and the enthusiasm injected in appropriate ways. If you may allow me to help you in your future speeches, I would like to recommend the following. I got distracted by the body language in some parts of the speeches, and I think it would be more helpful and more impactful if you adjust your body language to make it more suitable to the beautiful content of your speech. And I also sense that the speech is somewhat memorized rather than conversational in nature. I think that this is very important in communicating, especially if you will apply it to your future company, to the employees, so that they can relate to your beautiful story and to the personal content that you want to relate to the audience. Thank you for sharing that beautiful speech. I am looking forward to hear more happy and inspirational speech from you, distinguished Toastmaster.
Thank you so much, TM April, for that evaluation. You will be commented by TM Ruben.
Hi, April. How do I love thy evaluation? Let me count the ways. First, we have the same set of commendations. I also looked at, I thought it was really good of you to have pointed out the use of the story, the use of humor, and especially the point where you said enthusiasm. Not many evaluators point out the kind of delivery or the kind of tone that the speech requires, and what the speaker usually gives. And that's very important. It tells me that what you are is a very experienced evaluator already. I also like the way that your own tone in your speech where you were smiling most of the time, and that reinforces your comments that you like the speech. I also like your attempt a while ago where you said, where you connected a recommendation when you're talking about the weakness of the distracting gestures, right? And then you connected that statement with language words such as, more impactful, and that's a good thing. Also, I love the way you use motivational language, especially at the end when you said that you'd like to see more of John, John's speech, Jonas's speech. Sorry. Now, for my recommendations, the first one is uh, provide giving a suggestion for identified weaknesses. So as you know, the recommendations is required, has a lot, most points in an evaluation contest. So when you point out a weakness, we are, as evaluators, we are obligated to provide a fix for that weakness. So what do we suggest Jonases do in order to fix that distracting gestures, right? And it has to be specific and it has to be implementable. Usually what we say is the speaker does two things. One is to have a relaxed stance, meaning if he's not making something, if he's not making an important point, then he should probably just put his arms on the side. And if he's, and on those points that he think is important, then he could probably do a very important gesture. Second is that specificity is important as well now, because analysis has 30 points in the contest criteria, and analysis requires that we be specific in our evaluation. So when you said, I enjoy how you presented the introduction, I think you said, I enjoyed how you presented the introduction. What you need to do is to tell us what was it about the introduction that you specifically enjoyed. So specificity requires us to identify what part of the speech, what was done, to explain how it affected the speech, and to explain why you're pointing that out as something that's important. And finally, I'd like to suggest also that you try to give more, give some thought to structuring your speech more. And this is really just a personal style, but I could see some reluctance and hesitance on your part. But be confident next time. Just say what you think, you feel would help the speaker, and explore the other kind of structures to be more creative. And so, Toastmaster April, I love your evaluation in so many ways, and I shall love your evaluation after this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, TM Ruben. And also, I would like to congratulate all of the volunteers for this Learn and Grow session. Thank you for your fearless volunteerism for this evaluation session. I would also like to commend and also thank our speakers for this day. They have given us really, really wonderful learnings that we will carry out through our Toastmasters journey. Thank you, TM Priya, TM Craig, and TM Ruben for your time and effort. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank the clubs that has organized this wonderful event. Thank you, Nielsen Philippines Toastmaster Club, Impact Toastmasters Club, Real Page Toastmasters Club, and Makati Toastmasters Club. Truly, evaluation is the heart of Toastmasters, and we all must strive to be inspired by the evaluations that are given to us, and also be inspirational when we are given the chance to be evaluators in the future. Let's keep on learning, keep on shining, and keep the heart of being a Toastmaster. Soon enough, we will also be champion evaluators. Thank you so much for your time, everybody, and I hope you get to have a wonderful weekend ahead of you. Again, I am TM Sha, your Toastmaster of the day. Thank you so much. We will have a photo taking,
Yeah,
later. So before we
before that, I would like to call on the presidents of the club to formally greeting. While they're doing that, please turn on your video so that we're ready for the picture. Toastmaster list.
All right. Thank you everyone for a wonderful Saturday morning. And as president of Impact Toastmasters Club,
as president of Makati Toastmasters Club,
as president of the Nielsen Philippines Toastmasters Club,
as president of Real Page Toastmaster Club,
we would like to call this educational portion of evaluation.
thank you everyone.